Okay, so I grew up in Montclair, and I went all through the school system, and I graduated from Montclair High School in 1970, and consequently, I was there in those turbulent years of the late 60s. I went away to school actually in 10th grade in the 67-68 school year. But I was back in the fall of '68 and again graduated in the spring of 1970. And in those years, there were two social movements or issues that were going on in America, and they were of interest and were part of Montclair, which was the civil rights movement and the war in Vietnam. And I remember gathering in the amphitheater at the high school for demonstrations, or at least for gatherings in discussions of both issues, in support of the civil rights movement and against the war in Vietnam. And there were elsewhere in Essex County, in Newark, the riots were going on, and I'm trying to remember how much I was cognizant of that, but there was some controversy, I guess, at Montclair High School. But all the guys I knew and all my friends, that was basically our position, was in favor of expanding civil rights and in support of Black Power, which was really the movement word at the time, and against the war in Vietnam. And as I just said to the interviewer, we were right on both issues. And we had pushback, not so much from other students, but maybe from parents or adults or the police or teachers. Maybe mostly just to say don't cause trouble. But also, especially with the war in Vietnam, if you were against that war in the beginning, it was perceived that you were against America, or you were against the government, and that was looked on as bad, as opposed to simply, we had to remind the adults that protest was a part of America, and that's what we were doing. And for instance, my parents then came around. My parents were Republicans, and they both died as Democrats. They kind of changed their perspective, and my mother always said that it was because of me, because of my stance. So I had an older brother and sister, but they were, my brother was 10 years older than I, and my sister was 7 years older, so I was kind of separate, and my group was a different group than what my older brothers and sisters had gone through. And my mom, you see, my mom was born in Montclair in 1920, and she lived here all of her life, and she just passed away a few years ago at the age of 92. So she had a long experience in Montclair. And again, she might have been, I don't know, she'd say supportive of the war in Vietnam, but she probably thought that that's what we had to do until I sat her down and said, this is just all wrong, and what you're reading about is not what I'm seeing on the television here of the body bags, and we're being lied to, and like that. So that's what I experienced, and I'd say that most of my friends went through the same thing, that we were against that war in Vietnam and pro civil rights.